Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, or if this is your first time here, thank you for tuning in. I never thought I would be sitting here sharing this with all of you, but sometimes the only way to make sense of the chaos is to lay it all out and let the pieces fall where they will. I have spent the last few months replaying every conversation, every silent stare, every carefully worded text that cut deeper than any argument ever could. And I keep coming back to that one moment, that last conversation with my mother, where everything I thought I knew about my family just shattered. If you have ever felt the ground shift under you because the people who were supposed to have your back decided you were no longer worth the effort, then stick around. This one is raw, it is messy, and it left me questioning every single thing I believed about loyalty and blood. Hit that like button if you have ever had to choose yourself when the people who raised you chose everyone else. And let me know in the comments what you would have done in my shoes. My name is Brooke Ellis. I am 30 years old. I live in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood on the outskirts of Greenville, South Carolina, the kind of place where the houses sit far back from the road and everyone waves but nobody really knows what is going on behind closed doors. I built a small marketing consulting firm from the ground up after years of bouncing between corporate jobs that never quite fit. I am determined, I guess. Self-reliant to a fault, my husband always says. He works in logistics for a regional distribution company, steady and calm in ways I have never been. Our daughter Ava is 8, bright-eyed, and full of questions that make me laugh even on the hardest days. We are not wealthy by any stretch, but we have carved out a good life here in this peaceful pocket of the South. Or at least I thought we had, until my mother and our longtime family friend decided to remind me exactly where I stood. It started on a sticky Thursday afternoon in late spring. I had just wrapped up a client meeting at a little upscale private lounge not far from our neighborhood. The kind of high-end haven where local professionals go to talk investments and opportunities over coffee that costs more than my weekly grocery budget. The place has these heavy leather chairs and soft lighting that makes you feel like you belong even when you are scraping by on freelance gigs. My phone buzzed while I was walking to my car in the parking lot. It was my mother. I answered without thinking because that is what you do when it is family, right? Her voice came through sharp and clipped from the very first syllable. Brooke, we need to talk about the support we have been giving you for Ava's school fees and that little business expansion you keep pushing. The family friend is here with me. She agrees it is time we had a real conversation. No, hello. No, how are you? Just straight to the point, like I was an employee who had disappointed the board. The family friend had been in our lives for as long as I could remember, a close family friend who always seemed to pop up at every major decision. She and my mother had been thick as thieves since before I was born, the kind of duo that finished each other's sentences and backed each other up no matter what. I leaned against the warm hood of my car, the sun beating down on my shoulders, and tried to keep my voice steady. Mum, what are you talking about? We have been grateful for the help with Ava's tuition, but I thought we had an understanding that it was temporary, until my firm picked up more clients. The words felt heavy in my mouth. I could hear the family friend murmuring something in the background, and then my mother let out that familiar sigh, the one that always made me feel like I was 12 years old again and had tracked mud across her clean floors. Understanding, Brooke, you have been taking advantage of the family resources for far too long. The family friend pulled some strings and looked into a few things. Those family photos we all posted from the lake house last summer. The metadata tells a different story. Timestamps do not lie. You have been hiding how much trouble your little venture is in, and we cannot keep throwing good money after bad. We are cutting the support effective immediately. Ava can switch to the public school like everyone else, and you can figure out your business on your own 2 feet for once. The parking lot seemed to tilt under me. Metadata family photos, I had posted a few shots from a weekend gathering months ago. Nothing special, just Ava smiling with her cousins, my husband and I, trying to look relaxed. Now those same pictures were being weaponized against me. My mother did not even give me a chance to respond before she kept going, her voice rising with that chaotic edge that always surfaced when she felt justified. The family friend agrees completely. She has seen the numbers. You are not stable enough to be managing any of this, and quite frankly, your father and I have our own future to think about. The family fortune is not an endless well. Consider this your notice. I stood there gripping the phone so tight, my knuckles ached the humid South Carolina air, pressing in around me like it was trying to squeeze the air from my lungs. The family friend's voice cut in, then smooth and matter-of-fact, the way she always sounded when she was delivering bad news wrapped in concern. "Brooke, honey, this is for your own good. We have all been enabling this for too long. Time to stand on your own." The betrayal hit like a slap. The family friend was not blood, but she had been at every birthday, every holiday, every crisis. And here she was, siding with my mother, twisting the knife in perfect sync. I tried to argue my words, tumbling out in a rush that felt unstable even to my own ears. "This is insane. Ava loves her school. We have been planning the expansion based on that promise. You cannot just pull the rug out like this." But my mother cut me off with a cold laugh that echoed through the speaker. "We just did. And until you show us you can handle things without our help, the silent treatment might be the best thing for all of us. No more calls begging for favors. Prove you are as independent as you claim." The line went dead before I could say another word. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, staring at the dashboard while my mind spun in chaotic circles. The quiet neighborhood waited for me at home, but everything felt different now. When I finally pulled into our driveway, my husband was already there with Ava helping her with homework at the kitchen table. I walked in and tried to paste on a smile, but he took one look at my face and knew. "What happened?" he asked quietly, pulling me aside, while Ava stayed focused on her worksheet. I told him everything, the words spilling out in a jumbled mess. He listened, his jaw tight, but he did not panic. My husband never does. "We will figure it out," he said. "You are the strongest person I know." But that night, the silence from my parents' side of the family started. No texts checking on Ava. No weekend invitations. Just nothing. The rift deepened with every unanswered message I sent, each one met with radio silence that felt louder than any argument. The family friend even posted a vague story on social media about protecting family boundaries from those who take advantage. And I knew exactly who it was aimed at. The community we had built here in Greenville started to feel smaller, more isolating. Whispers at the neighborhood events, sideways glances at the grocery store. My mother had always been the center of our little social circle, and now she and the family friend were painting me as the problem. The next few days blurred into a chaotic haze of phone calls to the school to explain the sudden tuition change and late-night budgeting sessions at the kitchen table with my husband. Ava kept asking why she could not go back to her old classroom, her little voice cracking in ways that broke me. I told her we were making some changes, trying to sound wise and steady, but inside I was unraveling. I reached out to my colleague Sarah Klein, the one person at my firm who had become more like a friend than a co-worker. Sarah had been with me through the early days of the business, crunching numbers and helping with client pitches. When I explained the situation over coffee the following morning, her eyes widened. "Brooke, that sounds deliberate. Have you looked at those photos yourself? Metadata can be pulled up easily. Maybe there is more to this than they are saying." Her words planted a seed, but I pushed it down. I was too busy trying to keep my head above water. Then came the first real blow to my stability. My firm had been counting on a small line of credit from a local bank that my father had co-signed years ago as a show of support. When I went in to renew it, the manager, a man named Jordan Hayes, who had always been polite, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I am sorry, Brooke. Your parents reached out. They asked to be removed as guarantors, and without that we cannot approve the extension." Something about family financial restructuring. He would not say more, but the look on his face told me everything. My mother had moved fast. I drove home that afternoon feeling the unstable edge of panic creeping in. The quiet streets of our neighborhood, usually so comforting now, felt like they were closing in. My husband met me at the door with Ava's latest report card in hand, trying to celebrate the small win, but I could not even muster a smile. That evening, while Ava was in bed, I sat at my laptop and pulled up the old family photos from that lake house weekend. With Sarah's advice ringing in my ears, I opened the file properties on my computer. The metadata stared back at me timestamps that did not match the dates my mother had claimed, location tags showing edits made weeks after the supposed event. Something was off. Really off. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering in a chaotic rhythm. Why would they lie about something so trivial? The thought kept circling, unstable and relentless. I needed answers, but reaching out to my mother only got me more silence. The family friend sent one curt text the next day: "Give your mother space. This is bigger than you realize." The rift was widening into a chasm, and I could feel the isolation settling in like fog over the South Carolina hills. I confided in Dr. Laura Morgan, the financial advisor Sarah had recommended me to after the bank meeting. Laura had a calm presence that cut through my racing thoughts during our first virtual session. "Brooke, we will look into this together," she said. "But I have a feeling there is a document or two that might change how you see all of this." Her words hung there as the call ended. I did not know it then, but that unexpected hint of a document was about to flip everything I thought I knew about my family upside down. The fortune they had lorded over us, the support they had dangled like a lifeline, none of it was what it seemed. And the silence from my mother and the family friend was only the beginning of the storm. The next morning came too fast, the kind of humid South Carolina dawn that made everything feel heavier than it already was. I sat at our kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee in front of me, staring at the laptop screen where those family photos still glowed with their damning metadata. My husband had already left for his shift, kissing the top of my head and whispering that we would get through this together, but his steady voice only made the chaos inside me spin faster. Ava was still asleep upstairs, her backpack leaning against the wall, ready for the school she might not be able to afford next month. I felt the unstable pull of it all, like the ground was shifting again every time I tried to plant my feet. My mother and the family friend had gone completely quiet after that parking lot call. No follow-up texts, no explanations, just the heavy silence that stretched across the days and made every notification on my phone feel like a potential landmine. I sent a couple of careful messages asking for a real conversation, something face-to-face where we could sort through the numbers and the sudden cut-off. But they sat unread. The silent treatment was deepening the rift in ways I had never imagined possible. Friends in the neighborhood started asking polite questions at the mailbox, their voices laced with that careful curiosity that told me rumors were already circulating. The family friend had always been the one with the wide social network here in Greenville, the family friend who knew everyone's business and made sure the right people heard the right version of events. I tried to push through at work, scheduling client calls from the small home office I had carved out in the corner of our living room. But by mid-morning, one of my steadier accounts, a local boutique owner named Emily Carter, emailed to say she was pausing our marketing contract indefinitely. No real reason given, just a vague line about reassessing priorities during uncertain times. I knew exactly who had planted that seed. My mother had connections everywhere in this tight-knit community, and the family friend had been her willing messenger for decades. The financial pressure was mounting fast, turning what should have been a manageable dip into something that felt like it was closing in from all sides. That afternoon, I drove to meet Dr. Laura Morgan at her office downtown, a quiet, high-end space tucked into one of those restored historic buildings near the river. The drive felt chaotic, my thoughts racing between anger and that resilient voice in my head that kept saying I could fix this if I just got the facts straight. Laura greeted me with the same calm professionalism she had shown on our first call, but her expression tightened when I slid my laptop across the desk and pulled up the metadata from those lake house photos. "Brooke, this is more than just timestamps," she said, leaning in. "There are layers here, edits, location pings that do not match what your mother described. Someone went back and altered these files after the fact. It looks deliberate." Before I could respond, she opened a separate folder on her own screen. "I pulled some public records on the family accounts you mentioned, the ones tied to the support they were providing. What I found is unexpected." She turned the monitor toward me, and there it was, the mid-story twist I had not seen coming. A scanned document from a recent financial disclosure filing something my father had been required to submit for a small business loan he had taken out last year. The paper listed assets that looked impressive on the surface, but when Laura highlighted the footnotes, the numbers did not add up. Offshore holdings that had been quietly dissolved years ago. Property deeds transferred to shell entities that traced back to the family friend's own consulting firm. The entire fortune my mother had been dangling over us, the one they claimed we were draining, was not real. It was a carefully constructed illusion, propped up by creative accounting and the kind of quiet maneuvers that only someone with insider access could pull off. My stomach dropped. The room felt unstable, the soft hum of the air conditioner suddenly too loud in my ears. "They have been lying about the money this whole time," I whispered, my voice cracking in a way that made me sound far less resilient than I wanted. Laura nodded slowly, her eyes full of quiet sympathy. "It appears the support they gave you was never coming from some deep family reserve. It was cobbled together from short-term loans and appearances. And now they are using the silent treatment and the metadata story to force you out before you start asking the real questions." She slid a printed summary across the desk. "This is just the surface. We would need a full forensic review to prove it, but the pattern is clear. Your mother and the family friend have been managing perceptions more than actual wealth." I left her office with the document folded in my bag, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. The chaotic swirl of betrayal mixed with a strange, resilient clarity. I was not imagining things. This was bigger than tuition or a business line of credit. My mother had always positioned herself as the family anchor, the one who made the tough calls for everyone's good. The family friend had played the supportive role, the voice of reason who just happened to agree with every decision my mother made. Now that image was cracking, and the silence they had wrapped around me felt like a deliberate cage. The next few days turned into a blur of unstable highs and lows. I tried one more time to reach my mother, calling from the parking lot of Ava's school after dropping her off with the new public school paperwork. She answered on the third ring, but her tone was ice cold and detached in that chaotic way she had when she felt cornered. "Brooke, there is nothing left to discuss. The family friend and I have reviewed everything. The family photos do not lie, and neither do the bank statements we have seen. Your father agrees it is time you learn to stand on your own without expecting handouts." I could hear the family friend in the background murmuring approval, the two of them feeding off each other like they always did. "Mom, I saw the disclosure filing. The fortune you keep talking about it is not what you say it is. We need to sit down and look at this together before everything falls apart." My words came out faster than I intended, the unstable edge creeping into my voice. She laughed short and sharp, the sound cutting through the phone like a blade. "You are reaching now, aren't you, twisting documents to fit your narrative because you cannot accept responsibility." The family friend warned me this might happen. We are done enabling it. No more calls, no more meetings. Prove you can handle your life, or do not bother coming around. The line clicked dead, and the silence that followed felt heavier than before. My husband came home that evening to find me pacing the living room, the printed document from Laura spread across the coffee table. He listened while I explained the numbers, his face growing tighter with each detail. "This changes things," he said, quietly pulling me into a hug. "But we have to be careful. If they are this deep into appearances, they will not go down without a fight." Ava wandered in, then clutching her favourite stuffed bear, and asked again why we had to change schools. I knelt down and tried to explain it in the wisest, most resilient way I could, but my voice wavered and she picked up on the chaos underneath. That night, the silent treatment extended to her too. No goodnight texts from her grandparents, no weekend plans mentioned. The rift was swallowing us whole. I reached out to another new contact the following week, a local attorney named Marcus Reed who specialised in family financial matters. Sarah Klein had recommended him after hearing the latest from me over a rushed lunch. Marcus met me at a small cafe near the river, the kind of high-end private haven where conversations stayed discreet. He reviewed the disclosure document and the metadata files, his expression growing more serious as he flipped through the pages. Brooke, this is not just exclusion. This looks like a coordinated effort to rewrite the story before any real questions get asked. The fortune they claimed, it is built on smoke. And the way they use those photos as leverage, that is classic pressure to keep you quiet and isolated. His words landed like another twist in the already unstable storm. I felt the resilient part of me pushing forward, determined to dig deeper, but the chaos was winning out in waves. I left the meeting with a plan to gather more records, but as I drove back through the familiar Greenville streets, my phone buzzed with a single text from an unknown number. It was the family friend. Your mother asked me to send this. Stop digging into things that do not concern you. The family has made its decision. Any more interference, and we will have no choice but to make the situation public for everyone's sake. The message was short, but it carried the weight of a final warning. The silent treatment was evolving into something sharper, more threatening, and I could feel the irreversible consequences starting to close in. Later that evening, while my husband helped Ava with her homework, I sat alone in the home office, staring at the growing folder of documents. The core secret was staring back at me. The entire fortune was fake, a house of cards my mother and the family friend had built to maintain control and appearances intact, but knowing it did not make the pressure any lighter. My business was bleeding clients, Ava's new school schedule was already straining our routines, and the isolation from the family circle I had known my whole life was starting to feel permanent. I wanted to believe I could weather this, that my self-reliance streak would carry us through. Yet every unanswered call and every pointed silence from my mother chipped away at that belief, leaving me in a chaotic loop of doubt and determination. Then came the knock at the door just after dinner. My husband answered it, and I heard the family friend's voice in the hallway, polite but edged with that familiar authority. She had shown up unannounced, claiming my mother had sent her to check on things. My heart hammered as I stepped into the foyer. This was not the quiet resolution I had hoped for. It was the next escalation, and I could feel the ground shifting once again under my feet. Karen stood there in our doorway, the porch light casting long shadows across her face that made her look both familiar and strangely foreign. She had that practiced smile she always wore when she was delivering one of my mother's messages, the kind that never quite reached her eyes. Brooke, your mother asked me to stop by. She's worried things are getting out of hand with all this digging you've been doing. Can I come in for a minute? Her voice was smooth, reasonable, but the chaotic churn in my stomach told me this was no casual check-in. My husband stepped back to let her through his hand, brushing mine in silent support, while Ava peeked from the hallway, sensing the tension like kids always do. I led her to the living room, my hands trembling as I motioned toward the couch. The house felt smaller, the air thicker, every creak of the floorboards amplifying the unstable storm building inside me. The family friend, this isn't just about school fees anymore. I met with people, I saw the documents, the family photos, the metadata, it doesn't add up, and neither does the fortune my mother keeps throwing in my face. I pulled the folded disclosure papers from my bag and set them on the coffee table between us, the pages slightly creased from how many times I had read them. Dr. Laura Morgan's notes were clipped to the front, highlighting the shell companies and the quiet transfers that proved the entire fortune was fake, propped up by appearances and short-term maneuvers the family friend herself had helped orchestrate through her consulting work. She barely glanced at them before folding her hands in her lap, her expression shifting into that detached concern she and my mother perfected over the years. Brooke, honey, you are seeing conspiracies where there are none. Your mother has carried this family for decades. The silent treatment was supposed to give you space to reflect, not turn into some witch hunt with financial advisors and lawyers. She reached for her phone as if on cue, dialing my mother on speaker without asking. My mother picked up almost immediately, her voice cutting through the room like a live wire. Is she listening, Brooke? I told you to stop. Those documents you think you found? They are private family matters. You have no right twisting to make yourself the victim here. The conversation spiraled fast, my words tumbling out in a chaotic rush, while my mother's replies grew sharper, more dismissive. You have always been the dramatic one, Brooke. The family friend and I reviewed everything. The fortune is exactly what we said it was, and your little business troubles are your own doing. We cut the support because you refused to listen. Now you are dragging outsiders into our private business. That is the thanks we get for years of help. The family friend nodded along, murmuring agreements that only fueled the unstable fire in my chest. I tried to stay resilient, pointing to the highlighted lines on the paper, the metadata timestamps that proved edits, and the shell entities tied back to the family friend's firm. But every fact I laid out seemed to bounce off them, twisted into proof that I was unstable, ungrateful, and now fabricating stories to shift blame. My husband sat beside me, his presence the only steady thing in the room, but even he could not shield me from the way my mother's voice rose chaotic and unyielding. If you keep pushing this, Brooke, we will have no choice but to make it public. The neighborhood already knows you are struggling. The family friend has friends at the school board. One more step, and Ava's new placement could face questions too. The threat landed like a physical blow. I felt the rift widen into something irreversible, the silent treatment from the past weeks now weaponized into active isolation. My father's voice joined briefly in the background, echoing my mother's stance, but it was her words that drove every escalation, her decisions that had always set the tone for the family. The meeting stretched on for what felt like hours, papers shuffled, voices overlapping in that unstable tangle of denial and accusation. Marcus Reed had prepared me for this kind of pushback in our earlier talk, but hearing it play out in my own living room still left me reeling. By the time the family friend finally stood to leave, the documents lay scattered on the table like discarded evidence in a trial I was already losing. She paused at the door, her final words delivered with that calm finality my mother loved. Your mother wants what is best for everyone, Brooke. Walk away from this nonsense. The family has made its choice. The door clicked shut behind her, and the silence that followed was deafening, deeper than any before. In the days that came after the chaos inside me refused to settle, I pored over the papers with Sarah Klein late one evening at her apartment, the two of us cross-referencing every line until the truth stared back, undeniable. The entire fortune was fake, a carefully maintained illusion my mother and the family friend had sustained for years to keep control and appearances intact. The sudden financial exclusion the metadata weaponized against me, the silent treatment that had deepened the rift until it swallowed our relationship whole, it had all been a preemptive strike to keep me from exposing the house of cards. Dr. Laura Morgan confirmed the same in a follow-up call, her voice steady while mine cracked under the weight of it. Yet, when I tried to confront my mother one final time over the phone, the call ended in her hanging up mid-sentence, another layer of silence dropped like a wall. The painful choice came on a rainy afternoon 2 weeks later. I sat in Marcus Reed's office downtown, the high-end private haven, feeling anything but safe as he laid out the options. Fighting publicly with the documents would drag Ava through more uncertainty, risk my remaining clients, and likely end in a community that sided with my mother's long-established narrative. She had already begun spinning the story through the family friends network whispers that I was unstable, that I had fabricated financial claims to extort the family. The ironic twist hit me like a slap. The very evidence that detonated the secret of the fake fortune had been turned against me. My mother used the documents not as proof of her deceit, but as evidence that I was the one trying to destroy the family name out of resentment. The fortune was never real yet. She still held all the power because the illusion had always been about control, not cash. I made the choice in that office, my voice barely above a whisper as I told Marcus to drop any further action. No lawsuits, no public exposure, no more digging. I would accept the financial loss, the business setbacks, the permanent shift to public school for Ava. I would walk away completely cut, every tie block, every number, and build whatever fragile new life we could from the pieces. It felt like defeat, the kind that settles heavy in your chest and leaves you questioning every memory of family holidays and Sunday dinners. My mother had won the narrative, the family friend had helped seal the isolation, and the family I had known was gone. My husband held me that night while I cried in chaotic waves, but by morning, a strange, detached calm began to settle over me. The freedom was quiet, almost ironic in how empty it felt at first, yet it was mine. We never heard from my mother or the family friend again after that final decision. The silent treatment became permanent by my own hand, a boundary drawn in the only way left to protect what remained of our peace. Ava adjusted to her new school with the resilience only kids seem to have, and my husband and I slowly rebuilt the business, one small client at a time. The lesson came to me in the quiet evenings on our back porch watching the South Carolina sky fade. Sometimes walking away empowered is not about victory or justice through documents. It is about choosing your own truth when the people who raised you refuse to see it. Freedom through truth meant accepting the shattered lifelong loyalty, the painful cost of detached calm, and the quiet knowledge that I had finally stopped letting the toxic relationship define our future. 6 months have passed since I made that choice. The neighborhood still whispers, but the voices no longer reach us. I sit here now, calmer than I have been in years, the chaotic storm finally quieted into something steady and self-reliant. My mother's world continues without us, the fake fortune illusion, intact in the eyes of those who still believe it. And in the strangest twist of all, that loss gave me the one thing she could never control: the freedom to stop performing for a family that was never really there. Thank you for listening to my story. It was not easy to share, but laying it out like this has helped more than I expected. What would you do if the people who were supposed to lift you up suddenly pulled the rug out from under you and then blamed you for falling? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone, and knowing I am not alone in this makes all the difference.